Welcome to second grade, Unit 2, Building Fluency with Addition and Subtraction. The purpose of this video is to provide an overview of the standards, intended pacing, and sample instructional strategies for Unit 2. In this portion of the video, we are going to review the AKS and Indicators of Achievement, or IOAs, for Unit 2. The AKS is the overarching knowledge and skills that students are expected to master. The IOAs are the learning objectives that allow students to demonstrate mastery of the AKS. The AKS and IOAs may not be taught in their entirety the first time they appear on the instructional calendar. Some AKS and IOAs will appear multiple times throughout the year. In Chapter 2 of the video, we will look to see how the AKS and IOAs in this unit are paced in detail. This unit has 4 AKS, AKS 2, 5, 1, and 4. Under the AKS, you will find the Indicators of Achievement, or IOAs, that we are teaching at this time. Notice for AKS 2, we are only focusing on IOAs 2A, 2C, 2D, and 2E. For AKS 5, we will focus on IOA 5D. AKS 1C, which is a counting standard, will be clustered with AKS 4 through IOA 4B. You will also see that we have provided you with a state coding at the end of the IOAs so that if you are looking up resources on the Georgia Department of Education website, you are able to find the IOA that is related to the GCPS IOA. IOAs without the state coding at the end are specific to Gwinnett. When learning AKS 2, students will add and subtract numbers within 1,000 using a variety of strategies based on place value, part-whole strategies, and properties of operations. In Unit 2, we will focus on IOAs 2A, 2C, 2D, and 2E. Although the standard requires addition and subtraction within 1,000, we will only focus on adding and subtracting within 100 for quarter 1. Students will extend this learning to 1,000 in quarter 2. Through these IOAs, students will solve problems involving addition and subtraction of 2-digit numbers using part-whole strategies and adding up to 4 2-digit numbers. Students will focus more on adding up to 4 2-digit numbers in Unit 3. Students will also add and subtract fluently within 100 using strategies based on place value, properties of operations, and the relationship between addition and subtraction. They will also add and subtract to solve 1-step and 2-step word problems involving various problem types. About halfway through the unit, we will cluster IOAs 2A, 2D, and 2E with AKS 5, IOA 5D. At this point in the unit, students will use data and reasoning strategies to solve problems involving adding and subtracting 2-digit numbers within 100. Additionally, we will continue to prepare students for mastery of AKS 1 through IOA 1C. With this IOA, students will count forward and backward by ones, tens, hundreds, from any number within 1,000. Students will skip count forward by 5s from multiples of 5 and by 25s from 0. Students will explore patterns on a hundreds chart starting from a given number between 10 and 90. This IOA is clustered with AKS 4 for IOA 4B to give students the opportunity to continue exploring patterns through patterns involving addition and subtraction within 1,000 using models and representations. Through this IOA 4B, students will identify, describe, extend, and create numerical patterns resulting from repeating an operation, such as addition and subtraction. Welcome to Chapter 2, Unit 2. Our pacing guide is closely aligned with the state pacing. With the first year of new standards, we want to ensure we are following the expectations from the state. The pacing guide is an example intended to model how instruction of the AKS and IOAs in each unit may be facilitated, but teachers should design pacing to be responsive to the learning needs of their students. Now, let's look at the Elementary Communication Center, or better known as ECOM. Going to click into second grade. Going to go to math. And we're going to be looking at Unit 2 of the first 9 weeks. Notice that we're going to scroll down until you see the pacing guide button. Notice that we'll also need to scroll down past Unit 1. And now we're going to begin with Unit 2, Building Fluency with Addition and Subtraction. For Unit 2, we suggest 6 weeks. As you can see, the big ideas in this unit are numerical reasoning, patterning and algebraic reasoning, and measurement and data. This unit has been divided into 3 parts: adding and subtracting, recognizing patterns, and a revisit to measurement and data collection. The pacing guide is set up with a list of AKS and IOAs, which have been strategically clustered together. This is followed by our suggested pacing. On this side, we specifically provide the learning progressions for the AKS and IOAs. This includes the concrete, representational, abstract progression, and the progression between specific learning targets within the IOAs. We also have suggested manipulatives in this column. On the right side, we have provided resources to guide instruction, such as Gwinnett County Public Schools traditional lessons, as well as task-based lessons, and or resources from the Georgia Department of Education. As you can see, Unit 2 is paced starting with AKS 2 and IOAs 2C, 2D, and 2E, under the umbrella of adding and subtracting within 1,000. These IOAs are clustered together for 20 days and are the primary focus of Unit 2. IOA 2A is paced with these IOAs. This Fluency IOA was explicitly taught in Unit 1, but will be taught exclusively through activating strategies in this unit. Therefore, you will notice 2A in parentheses in the left column in the suggested sequence. Now let's look at the first 10 days of the suggested pacing. You will see that the sequence begins with students utilizing addition and subtraction strategies involving 2-digit numbers within 100, anchored in one-step word problems, using a variety of problem types. Remember that in second grade, students will be limited to solving word problems with two-digit numbers within 100. We began the unit with result unknown and part unknown type problems because these types of problems typically show action that students can understand and readily model with manipulatives. The suggested sequence allows students to connect use of base 10 blocks with the concrete level, from the concrete level to base 10 drawings and number lines as they conceptualize better and move on to the representational stage. I would like to highlight a couple of examples and instructional strategies for you today from Unit 2, Building Fluency and with Addition and Subtraction. The first example I would like to look at is based on AKS 2, IOAs 2C, 2D, and 2E. We will be looking at an example from the Unit 2 pacing. Greg has 57 M&Ms in his snack cup. He has 23 more M&Ms than his sister Entress. How many M&Ms does Entress have in her snack cup? So, looking at the problem, I know the exact amount of M&Ms that Greg has. Greg has 57 M&Ms. I also know that Greg has 23 more M&Ms than his sister Entress. What I don't know is the amount of M&Ms that Entress has. So we'll use the information about Greg to determine the information about Entress. Therefore, Entress, she is the referent unknown. Her quantity is unknown. So one way to help students with this type of problem is to model a matching strategy through a bar model. So I'm going to start off by just putting a G for Greg and an A for Entress. And then I'm going to draw a bar model to represent the amount of candies that I know Greg has. Greg has 57 M&Ms. I know that Entress does not have the same amount of M&Ms, but I'm going to match his amount by drawing another bar graph, a bar model right under. I know that Entress has 23 less. So I'm going to estimate this might be about 23 less. She has 23 less than her brother. I'm going to use a triangle to represent the unknown in this problem. So by doing this, the students can create an equation to infer some action. So now they're looking at, okay, Greg has 57, and Tress has not 57, but she has 23 less than 57. So now that we have that equation, 57 minus 23, we want to make sure that we define for students that the triangle is equivalent to the unknown. Okay, so that's the amount that we're trying to find out. In the original lesson, it's a representational lesson. Today, I decided to also model concrete, and then we'll move into a connection between the concrete and the representational stage. So now that we have our equation, I'm going to model the base 10, which is the concrete level for your students, now that you have your equation. So now that we have our equation, we can use action in the problem. So Greg had 57 and Andres has not 57, but we know Andres actually has 23 less than 57. Normally, we do not model the subtrahend in a problem, we only model the minuend, which is the number that we start with. However, with a matching strategy for compare, it would be one of the strategies you could use to model. So we're matching Greg's 57, and we know that interest really doesn't have 57, but she has 23 less. So I'm going to take 23 away from interest. So 1, 2, 3. I took away 3 ones. Now I'm going to take away the 2 10s that would represent the 20. 1 10, 2 10s. So we've taken 23 away from interest. Because remember, we know that Greg had 57 to begin with, and interest had 57 minus 23. So now we know that interest has 34 candies. Okay, so 34 candies is the amount that interest has, and we know that Greg has 57 candies. So the referent unknown is now known. We know that interest has 34 candies. Now I want to go back to make sure that students understand that our triangle, which was our variable in this problem, equals 34. And I could even write interest has 34 M&Ms. Now, another strategy that we could use, which is on the representational side, we can connect that to a number line. So in this representation, we're using the same equation, 57 minus 23. I might not necessarily do this on the same day with students, but knowing that you want students to be able to use different strategies, you might model this with a group, or you may model it at a different time. So I'm going to start my number line as an open number line, which means that there are no numbers that are on it. And you want to make sure that your students understand how number lines work. So I know that I'm starting with 57 and I'm going to be taking away from it. So that means that my number is going to get smaller. So I know that the larger number is going to go on the right end of my open number line, because I'll be moving backwards. My numbers are going to get smaller as I move to the left on a number line. My numbers always get smaller. So we just want to make sure that students understand that. So we're going to be taking away 23. This is a piece where you may want to help your students decompose the 23. Okay, so we know that earlier we had 2 10s and 3 1s that represented 23. So that might be an opportunity for you to connect that base 10 with the number line, where you're saying, okay, students, we're going to take away 23, but let's do it in parts. We can take away 3, which would be those 3. 57, take away 3 would be 54. And then we're going to take away 20. Well, again, we can chunk that and take away minus 10, which would be 1 rod, to give us 44. And then we could take away another 10, which would be 34. And then we want to make sure students understand that in total, this would still be the 20 that we took away. So we took away a total of 23 from our 57 to give us 34. So again, our unknown is equal to 34 M&Ms. And now we've figured out what the referent unknown, the value of the referent unknown is. So when working with problems of this type, make sure you're asking probing questions of students, such as, how much would interest need to have the same amount as Greg? Or how many extra candies does Greg have? Just make sure students are understanding that initially there really wasn't much action that we could have done. We could just compare, but then we created a situation for them to infer some action by comparing them in this way with a matching strategy with the bar graph, the bar model, and then we went back and used base 10 blocks on the concrete level, and we used a number line to subtract on the representational level. Second example I would like to highlight is AKS 4 IOA B. This standard is new to second grade. So let's look at it. We know that the overarching standard is to identify, describe, extend, and create repeating patterns, growing patterns, and shrinking patterns. The part of the standard, or the IOA, that we're going to look at today is IOA 4B. Identify, describe, extend, and create a numerical pattern resulting from repeating an operation such as addition and subtraction. For example, start with 25 and jump by 25s to create a pattern. 25, 50, 75, 100, 125. Also, you could change the start number and create a pattern. And then one question that would be good to ask students is, what did you notice? Here are some considerations of this standard from the ATS. Repeating patterns are a focus of kindergarten and first grade. First grade introduces numerical patterns with growing and shrinking patterns. The focus of second grade is numerical patterns. So again, just make sure that you realize we're not doing some of the things that you may see the lower grades doing. In second grade, we're focusing on the numerical patterns. Patterns are embedded in several standards, including counting, skip counting, place value, the use of part-whole strategies to add and subtract, and partitioning rectangles into rows and columns. Patterns involving 25 start at 0 and or a multiple of 25. So the example that we're going to be looking at today is from a lesson on the pacing. It's the very first one. It is a concrete lesson. Notice that our IOA we're working with is 4B. In parentheses, we have 1C, which is the counting IOA, and it will be taught exclusively through our activating strategies. So also the bullet for that counting strategy appears first. So count forward and backward by ones from numbers greater than 120. That's the IOA related to the counting standard. We're going to actually start right here at the second bullet where it says identify, describe, extend, and create numerical patterns. Now notice that the part that is bold is the identify, describe, and extend. At this point, we're not going to ask students to create a numerical pattern. Also, the next bullet is to add and subtract 1 or 2. So they're going to need to notice about patterns that are just like 1 or 2. Okay, so again, we're starting off simple so that they start to learn the concept. And one of the manipulatives that you could use is snap cubes. Today I'll be using tiles. The example that we're looking at, again, is from our pacing. It is the first example, first lesson for IOA 4B. Autumn got a new puppy named Kashmir for her birthday. She used small treats to teach him to follow commands. On the first day, Kashmir earned 2 treats for staying put. On the next day, he earned 4 treats for staying put. By the third day, he was doing so well that he earned 6 treats. If Kashmir continued this pattern of staying put, how many treats do you think he earned on the 4th day? So I want to notice what's going on in the problem. I noticed that Autumn got a new puppy named Kashmir. That's cool. But what I really want to notice is that on the first day, Kashmir earned 2 treats. The next thing I want to notice is that he earned 4 treats on the next day. And then I want to notice that he earned 6 treats on the next day. So what I want to do with students is that I want to first model what is happening in the problem. And I also want to think about what am I having to figure out. So I need to determine the pattern, and I need to determine how to extend it, what would happen on the next day. So 2 things I'm trying to figure out. It says if the pattern continued, how many would he earn on the 4th day? So I really am looking at 2 things. I need to figure out what is the pattern and how many treats would he earn on the 4th day. So first, let's look at the pattern. So we have 2 treats on day 1. That's the first one. Then on the 2nd day, he earned 4 treats. On the 3rd day, he earned from the problem 6 treats. So far, we can see that the pattern is 2, 4, 6. You're going to have some students who are going to automatically notice that the numbers are even numbers. Some students may notice that, and they may say, oh, I know what it is. It's all right. So we want the students to be able to notice the pattern that is being created. So if we notice that each time what is happening, so you want to ask students questions such as, well, what do you notice? What's happening? Look at the first term. We had 2 treats. And then what happened? Well, they may tell you, oh, 2 more treats were added. Oh, and what happens next? 2 more treats were added. So each time, 2 more treats were added. Two more treats are added each time. So you want to make sure students notice that. Again, you may have some students who will be able to look at that counting by 2s, a skip counting by 2s pattern, and they may notice that 8 is the next one. But again, we want to make sure that they also are paying attention to exactly what the action is, and that they know that we're not just counting the number or skip counting the numbers. We're also paying attention to what was being added to our number. So if we add 2 more again, because it says continue the pattern, how many treats do you think are going to be earned on the 4th day? Then we're going to put down the 6 like before, like on the 3rd day, but then we need to add 2 additional treats. So we know by adding the 2 additional treats, that will give us 8 treats on the 4th day. So to continue our pattern, we have 8. 8 is going to be the number of treats that Kashmir would receive on the 4th day. So I think this is going to be a fun standard for our students. And we just need to make sure that we're remembering to give them those concrete manipulatives to help them to see and experience the patterns. Okay, now let's go on to the same problem, but on the representational level. So if I wanted to also model this on the representational level, or I could extend my concrete for a day and connect the 2, concrete and representational, I could bring out my hundredths chart and I could model it that way. So we know that on the 1st day, Kashmir received 2 treats, and you could also bring out the student hundredths charts and have them do this with you in your group, or at your table, or if you're doing it during your mini lesson, they can bring them to the floor. So on the 1st day, he received 2 treats. On the second day, he received 4 treats. On the third day, he received 6 treats. And again, we want the students to be able to notice and wonder as well, what is the number of treats he's going to receive on the 4th day. Hopefully, students will notice things such as visually, you can see that the next box after, or the next number after 2 is skipped. Same thing with 5. And hopefully, if the pattern remains the same, 7 would be skipped. And students will see that 8 would be the next number. So although they may see it visually, again, you want to make sure that students are noticing that you're going from 2 to 4. Okay, you're going from 4 to 6. You're going from 6 to 8. And they need to notice what is happening from 2 to 4. So that you're adding 2 more each time. And the pattern created is 2, 4, 6. And then our number we were looking for is 8 treats.